All right, my turn. Thank you very much. I have a question of clarification on your testimony, and then I have a couple of questions. I just want to assure and thank the audience for your patience as we go through this. Dr. Lynch, you said in your testimony that you would be hopeful that you want to provide gifted services and foreign languages in our schools. Are those not being provided?
It is. They are provided. More would be an opportunity. Various languages would be an opportunity. For example, at our international school, Bodine, we are able to provide 2 languages.
Is that unusual?
For an international school, it would be. Mm-hmm. The opportunity to be able to provide additional languages to students who are interested in moving into the world of international affairs, it would be ideal.
And how about gifted education? Is that provided in every school?
Gifted education with fidelity, the way that our children deserve. There's an opportunity to definitely improve, which is why I included it in my statement.
Is your answer then no, it's not being provided in every school?
My answer would be that it is not provided in every school the way that the regulations for the state indicate that it should be provided, and it's not provided in every school to the extent that the district would like to provide it.
So it's my understanding that according to the Pennsylvania State Code, it mandates that every school district provide gifted education to every child at every school, and that every high school student have 2 languages afforded to them, and at least one of those languages being offered in a 4-year sequence. Is the School District of Philadelphia in violation of the state code?
There are opportunities for the school district to provide gifted services with greater fidelity across the school district. There is, to my knowledge, 2 languages that are taught in every high school. I am not certain that the state code says 4 years. My understanding was that it said a 2-year
1 year. One language has to be provided in a 4-year sequence, but 2 languages must be offered at every high school.
2 languages at every high school. I thought it was a 2-year sequence, not 1 at a 4-year sequence.
At least one must be at a 4-year sequence.
I can check that and get back to you.
As we talk about what we are trying to do, it is my hope that the School District of Philadelphia and all of us understand that inequity and the elimination of inequity across the city is a primary goal. But there are basic ways that we can start to ensure that inequity is not being being addressed on a much more direct basis as opposed to a rhetorical kind of comment. And I guess what I'm hoping to have with this conversation is to understand ways in which that happens and how we do it. I do want to just note for the record that Fran Burns, who's the Chief Operating Officer, and Cheryl Logan, who I believe were the Chief Academic Officer, in addition to the School Reform Commission members, were asked to come to this hearing. And in part, it is because we are trying to have a good conversation between the school district and city council. For us to feel strong and confident about the dollars that we bring to the school district, if we are looking at changes in services, if we are asking people to see their taxes raised. We need to better understand what the priorities of the school district are across the spectrum. And for many of us, our complaints that come into the school district happen not only around academics, but the breakdown around school support services as well as the basic operations. So, I don't expect you to respond to that, but I just wanted to put that out there. If you could, please, it would help if you could provide a brief overview of current staffing levels and vacancies and changes that may have occurred over the last 5 years. Specifically, it would help to have you talk a little bit about teacher vacancies. As we know, we can't really talk about inequity if we don't have a teacher in front of a classroom of students. And it's my understanding that we opened the school year with almost 200 teacher vacancies in classrooms. Could you clarify what the current teacher vacancy is?
My understanding is that information was provided prior to the meeting. I don't have that information in front of me, but it was provided by our HR staff. It's also that my understanding was that we did, in fact, open the school year with vacancies. I don't recall that it was as many as 200, but yes, we opened with vacancies. And hopefully you have that information. I do not.
Okay, so I believe we got an email today at 12:40 p.m., but the teacher vacancies that we have through the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers indicates that there are 184 classrooms with no teacher in front of them today. Would you consider that to be an accurate figure?
It seems slightly high, but I don't know the accurate figure.
So one of the issues that we have is how young people are supposed to learn, and it would help also, now this is something that would fall under Cheryl Logan, is that correct? She would know this information.
This would be something that would probably come from our talent office. And academics, if you're asking questions about academic support or the actual activities within the classroom involving a teacher, yes, in fact, Cheryl Logan would probably be helpful with that conversation as well.
Okay. I would hope that the issue of teacher vacancies isn't an HR issue. I would think that it would be an issue of extreme alarm to the academic nature of children.
Well, I would share with you that the issue of teacher vacancy is an issue that is of great concern to everyone that serves on the superintendent's cabinet. It's a great concern of all of us. It's a great concern. And it's a concern that we look at with urgency.
Okay. Notably, it is February of 2016, and I believe school started on September 8th.
Yes.
So the urgency, I'm trying to understand how the urgency is being addressed.
Well, I think, and I can't detail this, but I can share with you that the urgency has been addressed by active pursuit of and recruitment of qualified teachers. I know that our organization has extended emergency certifications where teachers can be found. The challenge is that a good number of, this is a workforce that's in place at the start of the school year, and so to the extent that positions are vacant, it becomes a challenge. We also have an attrition rate that's considerable, and we have long-term absences, and so the combination makes it a challenge to fill all of the positions that are vacant.
Does the School District of Philadelphia do exit interviews with teachers who leave the district to find out why they're leaving?
I personally have not seen exit interview information, but I'm fairly certain that they do. I can share with you that the district does in fact do a customer service survey where we solicit from our teachers, our principals, our parents, and students information about the district, how they think about and what they think about their jobs, the challenges, and that information is readily available and in fact on our webpage.
So one of the things that we will be asking about, and I will assure my council colleagues that we will find information about, is a clear clarification about teacher vacancies broken out by special education, regular education, the number of long-term substitute serving students. We will be asking about the percentage of teacher vacancies that have lingered since September 8th. I think that's a very important thing to understand if there are students who are not receiving those, have not seen a teacher since school started. And additionally, we hope to break out by school type, elementary, middle, and high school, special admit, neighborhood, and magnet. I think those, and we'll be sending you this information more directly.
So my understanding is that the information was sent through the spreadsheets. If there's additional information that we can provide, we will definitely try and do that. It was just shared with me that the numbers of vacancies that we have in regular education is 124 and in special education 49.
In special ed, what?
So that brings the total to 173.
So roughly 173 times 30 is 5,200 children who do not have a teacher in front of them on a regular daily basis. I just wanted to make that, I guess we can adjust that a little bit for the special education numbers, but to me, that is a very serious concern. Not something that I think that this council will let go of and hold the district accountable to. Every child deserves a teacher in front of them on September 8th. Not only do I think they deserve it, it actually mandates it. So to the extent that this is not happening on any basis, this is going to be a major cause of priorities. I would assume, if I could speak on behalf of our council, that that is a top priority. We can't even start to talk about education if a child doesn't have a teacher in front of them. The substitute teacher fill rate, could you talk a little bit about what is happening with the current fill rate on substitute teachers? And the year-to-date, the number of prep periods that have been lost by teachers for covering. This is, to my understanding, at some point, the School District of Philadelphia must reimburse teachers for a certain percentage of prep periods that are covered, and that this is an additional financial burden that the school district incurs. Is that correct?
Yes, and this is additional information on this topic I will have to make certain is sent to you because I don't have that information with me right now.
We'll be following up on that one. Thank you. How many students in the School District of Philadelphia currently have access to art and music on a weekly basis?
I don't have that number either.
Is that considered a top priority?
Art and music? Yes.
And can you say with assurance that the majority of students in the school district receive arts and music on a weekly basis?
That would definitely be something that I would have to get back to you on.
Okay, thank you. This is an area that is much more within your bailiwick because as Director of Student Supports, I think that we can have a easier dialogue since this is not something that is well outside of your area. One of our greatest concerns, obviously, is the School District of Philadelphia has laid out a clear priority around its action plan. And one of the top priorities it lists on its action plan is to implement the bullying and harassment policies with fidelity. However, in a recent seventh study, which you wrote into the action plan, not you personally, but your team wrote into the action plan, you noted that over 61% of students surveyed reported being concerned about bullying at schools. Over 50% of students reported being a victim of bullying, and 40% reported being a perpetrator of peer aggression and bullying at least one time in the prior month. And more than 80% of students at schools indicate that nobody does anything to try to stop the bullying. None of their peers do, and 40% of students report that students and teachers and other adults in the building do little to nothing to stop the bullying. Obviously, since that was written into the action plan as a notable, who actually is responsible for handling bullying and harassment in schools?
So I'm not certain. Can you say again where those figures came from? Because they're not familiar to me. And I think probably a better source or an additional source of information about bullying and harassment would be, I think the last time that I testified before the City Council, I shared the results of our survey that we conduct, the one that I just mentioned, that surveys teachers, it surveys students, it surveys parents. Bullying and harassment, which in fact is part of my area of responsibility, is one of the questions that was asked on that survey. In fact, several of the questions spoke to bullying and harassment, and I think that the outcome, the results of that survey show that from the perspective of teachers, the perspective of parents, and the perspective of students, they each have a very, very different idea about what's occurring. That from the perspective of students, it happens, it's far more infrequent, it happens less. From the perspective of parents, their results were very close to what students reported. From the perspective of teachers, it happened more. And so the opportunity to delve further into that and to see whether or not there are any trends, it's a survey that we conduct again at the end of the school year, probably closer to April, and we will be able to see whether or not there's a trend, a pattern, whether or not this information is a fluke, just what the results might be. So, I would ask that after that point, we'd be able to see more and be able to know more.
So for clarity, that came from Action Plan 3.0 on the school district's website, page 21.
Thank you.
But the question remains, who is actually responsible for addressing bullying and harassment in schools?
I just shared that would be me. That's part of my area of responsibility.
Who at the school-based level?
Oh, at the school-based level. It would be everyone's responsibility to address bullying and harassment where they see it, and in our training and in our policy that we circulate, that's exactly the case. Every classroom, in fact, is expected, and all throughout the schools, we expect to see the policies on bullying and harassment posted.
So, Dr. Lynch, in 2009, 2010,
Councilmember,
yes.
It's not Dr. Lynch, it's Ms.
Oh, I'm
Lynch.
sorry. I thought you were a doctor.
No.
Oh, well, I'm elevating you up. Ms. Lynch, in 2010, the School District of Philadelphia was under a U.S. Department of Justice order for failure to address bullying and harassment of students. And one of the things that came out through that order was the district argued that everybody at a school would be responsible for bullying and harassment. And in fact, the U.S. Department of Justice found that not to be an acceptable response. And in return, the School District of Philadelphia actually developed a pretty comprehensive plan that put in place under Mr. Otis Hackney at South Philadelphia High School that seemed fairly effective. And it actually designated an individual to specifically address bullying and harassment that students and teachers and school staff who were required to do bullying and harassment knew that there was an individual who was there and present at the school who would connect the child or the victim or the perpetrator to a series of support services that would document and take reports that would address and direct that. Has the school district stepped away from that practice since it was considered a best practice?
I would say that across the school district, the benefit that we've had over time is that more people have become involved in this effort, more people are familiar. When we train at the school level, we train everyone in the school that is able to attend our training sessions, and our policy says that everyone will be, that all across their district, when we see it, when we recognize it, it's something that we will report. I can share with you that that's the practice we're following.
So this is, again, another question because it sounds like there might be confusion about, from a school-based perspective, how a student at a school or an individual teacher at a school would know who specifically to go to. The School District of Philadelphia obviously has a school safety officer, Ms. Diane Schur, who's at the legal department, is supposed to be addressing bullying and harassment specifically, but does she communicate directly with any and specific individuals to ensure that bullying and harassment is being addressed better in schools?
Diane Schur retired several months ago, and her position is currently recruiting. We're recruiting to fill that opportunity, and so as soon as that opportunity is filled. In her absence, we have behavioral health staff, or I guess post her retirement, we have behavioral health staff who've been serving in that capacity.
How does anybody at a school know who to contact?
I think everyone in the school has known. They've been given the number that Diane had, and we are keeping track. The calls come to my office if schools have issues.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple more questions, and then I will just double check it to see if any of our other council colleagues have additional follow-up questions. So a couple of questions has been, the school district came before us a couple of weeks ago to talk about, or actually this was in December, to talk about its work around trauma-informed care. And one of the questions that came forward was, although we understand that people are being trained in it and that kind of thing, that there again needs to be a central person who addresses this. And one of them has been a question about the issue of school counselors and the lack of school counselors, the lack of schools without full-time counselors, number one, and the ratio of student to counselors that is a very serious concern. The American School Counselor Association recommends a ratio of approximately 1 to 250 1 to 250 students per counselor. We know very well that there are a number of schools without full-time counselors. I don't know if you have that, but the PFT provides us with indications that there are at least 49 schools without full-time counselors, and that there are a number of schools in which the ratio of 1 to 250 is nowhere near that at the majority of our schools. What is the priority around reinvesting around the school counselors? Obviously, the state Supreme Court makes it very clear that the School District of Philadelphia should abide by the contract, and the union contract states very clearly that every school will have a full-time counselor. Is it the district's priority to abide by that, and how much would that cost?
The information that was provided earlier speaks to the numbers of schools. I believe the number is in fact 49, so I agree with that number. number of schools that are sharing a school counselor. The cost of a school counselor is roughly $150. And so I'd have to provide that exact number, but to provide services in the additional 40, I would multiply the additional 49, I'd divide that by 2 and multiply it to determine how many additional and how much that cost might be. And I can provide you with the average dollar amount for a starting salary for a school counselor.
I think in the Supreme Court brief to on behalf of the school district, they wrote that it would be roughly $3.7 million. Does that sound about right?
I would not commit to that number because I'm not certain.
But we're not talking about 10 or 20.
And that number seems a little low to me.
3.7 seems low?
Yeah, it does. It seems a little low.
And then in terms of issues around schools without full-time nurses, so the PFT again provides indication that there are about 123 schools without full-time nurses. That's more than half. We know that in talking to principals, talking to parents, and talking to a number of support services, that this is another major area of concern, the lack of full-time nurses in schools. And I guess one of my questions is that has the school district calculated how much it would cost to restore a full-time nurse?
Well, I can share with you that the cost of a full-time nurse is probably closer to $135,000. The number that you offered, what was it?
123 schools without a full-time nurse.
So does that include the number of private and parochials? Because
it does not.
Then 123 might be a little high. I know that we're in 339 schools right now. We have 189 staff, and so that number, I mean, you can multiply 123 times 130 is what?
Well, I think that is without a full-time nurse, not without a nurse at all.
Okay,
so there would be an adjustment for that figure.
And how many would that be that they estimate would be needed?
It's my understanding that before one of your staff people left, who was chief of staff to Superintendent Height, that she gave us an estimate of approximately $8 million to restore a nurse to every single public school in Philadelphia, and approximately $12.5 to $13 million to restore a nurse to every single parochial, public, and parochial, private, and public school in Philadelphia.
So that would be 8 and 12? Is that what you said?
Roughly 8 and 13.
8 and 13?
Yes. So I guess part of my question is that I know that the School District of Philadelphia is asking for more money. And I guess one of the questions that we always have within City Council is, should the district continue to get money, or as we obviously it will get money from both the city and the state, if it gets additional money, where do the priorities become? What are its central priorities around restoration, a restoration agenda fundamentally back to every school?
I shared the priorities in the statement when I pointed out some of the tremendous priorities that we have. In the statement, I think I shared that. In fact, I know that I should.
So I just want to readdress again that it sounds like between, if we were to say 3.7 million is too low to restore a counselor back to every school. But we are talking about less than $20 million that would guarantee a full-time counselor and a full-time nurse in every single public school in the school district of Philadelphia, and a full-time nurse in every single private and parochial school in Philadelphia. And that seems like a number that is manageable, as opposed to the 300 million or 5 billion that sometimes gets pushed out there. That seems overwhelming.
I'm sorry, didn't you say 13 million plus the 8 million?
No. 13 million would include, would be the total in terms, it would be an additional 5 million to do private and parochial.
The one thing that I think is probably important would be, before I make a commitment one way or another, to actually look at the information, look at PFT's information and cost it.
And is that something that we can be clear about? Because I think one of the things that we really need from the school district is a restoration agenda that prioritizes where the spending will go. It feels like, from our perspective, that a lot of money does go to the school district of Philadelphia, and a lot of it goes out in unclarified expenses, and our children still seem to be falling farther and farther behind, and that we can't even make basic issues like school code requirements. That's going to be a very serious issue.